They said the railroad built this country. I say it buried a lot more than steel. My name's Eli Reeves. Once, I wore a badge and hunted people for the railroad company runaways, thieves, sometimes just folks who got in the way of progress. That was before I learned what progress smells like. Burnt wood, old blood, and hot iron. The day I met Clara Moen again, the sun looked mean. There was an auction outside a ghost town saloon, no law here. Just men trading what's left of their souls for whiskey and work. They called it a debtor's sale. I called it what it was. Slavery wearing a new hat. She stood on the wagon, wrists cuffed, hair full of dust. Someone yelled, "Who'll pay for the train robbers, girl?" Nobody answered. Not until I did. "I will." Heads turned. Even the wind stopped to listen. I handed the bounty man a wad of cash. My last job's pay. He looked me over, spat, and said, "Well, if it ain't the railroad's hound himself. Buying your own sin back, Marshal?" I didn't bother to correct him. He was right. When the chains dropped, she didn't thank me. Didn't even look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the tracks cutting through the desert, the same tracks that took her brother's life tracks I once guarded. I offered her my canteen. She stared at it like it was poison. "You can't unshoot a bullet," she said. Her voice was dry but steady. "No," I told her, "but I can keep the next one where it belongs." That's when she laughed short, bitter, honest. "Is that what mercy means to you, Marshal?" I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, same as the day I pulled the trigger on her brother. "Mercy," I said, "ain't a word. It's a debt you carry until someone else can walk again." The crowd was already moving on. Deals done. Sins traded. But I stood there, feeling the weight of that word digging into me like a spur. She started walking down the road without asking where we were headed. I followed, because I didn't have the right to lead. Every step kicked up dust that glowed red in the light, like the earth itself remembered the blood we both tried to forget. They say the West was won. Maybe it was just bought too cheap. The road out of that town didn't have a name. Most roads out here don't. They just start somewhere between guilt and dust and end wherever a man finally tells the truth. Clara walked ahead of me, silent as a dry riverbed. Every step she took left a mark, small and angry, like she was trying to stomp the world back into shape. I carried the canteen she wouldn't finish, and my own regret that wouldn't quit. We passed houses without roofs, signs with no words, and graves marked with tin plates stolen from dinner tables. The war was over for years now, but you wouldn't know it from the smell of this desert smoke, sweat, and bad memory. By sunset, the heat broke. The air turned red and heavy, like the day was bleeding out. She finally spoke. "You were there, weren't you?" Her voice didn't shake. That made it worse. "Where?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Larkin's Junction. The railroad riot. My brother Tom, he ran supplies for the miners." I didn't answer right away. The wind did that for me, howling through the telegraph poles like ghosts still waiting for news that never came. "Yeah," I said finally. "I was there." She didn't stop walking. Didn't even turn around. Just said, "He was 17. Nothing makes a man smaller than hearing the age of someone he's helped bury. We reached a creek that barely deserved the name. She knelt, cupped water in her palms, and said, "You can camp there. I'll go farther down." "No need," I said. "I ain't gonna touch you. That's not what I'm worried about." Her tone was sharp but fair. The kind that tells you the line between hate and fear is paper thin. I built a small fire anyway, careful not to let it flare too high. The light made the iron on her wrists glow like hot embers. "Why do you still wear them?" I asked. She looked at the cuffs, then at me. "Because people believe what they see. If I walk free, someone else will try to fix that." She wasn't wrong. Freedom out here's a rumor that dies young. She sat across the fire, eyes on the flames. "You ever wonder if God still looks this way?" "Not lately," I said. "He's got better places to watch." She gave half a smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "You talk like a preacher who lost his sermon." "Maybe," I said, "or a lawman who learned the law ain't holy." The fire popped. Sparks flew up, burning brief and bright before turning black again, like people, I guess. I reached into my coat, pulled out the badge I'd stopped wearing, and tossed it into the dirt between us. "Looks lighter off you," she said. "Never was mine to carry," I replied. A coyote cried somewhere far off. The kind of sound that makes you remember loneliness has a shape. I thought she'd gone to sleep, but then she spoke, softer this time. My brother used to build model trains from scrap wood. Said one day they'd take us west, to where the sea ends. Guess he was right. It just didn't end how he thought. Her words hung in the air like prayer smoke. For a long time, neither of us said a thing. The fire burned down to ash, and the night began to breathe again. When dawn came, the light was pale and cold. She stood first, brushed the dust from her dress, and looked east where the tracks shimmered under the Sunday. "So where are you taking me, Marshal?" she asked. I tightened the saddle straps, squinted toward the horizon. "Somewhere no one's got a reason to chase you. Or me." She gave a dry laugh. "You think such a place exists?" "Used to think not," I said. "Now I think maybe we build it ourselves, one quiet mile at a time." She stared at me, measuring the truth in those words, then nodded once the kind of nod that means, "I don't trust you yet, but I'm willing to walk beside you till I decide." And so we did. The road stretched ahead, empty but honest. Behind us, the desert covered its dead. In front of us, a storm was forming over the mountains, gray, wide, and waiting. By the time we reached the ridge, the wind had teeth. A storm was building from the south, dark as a bruise. Below us lay a town that didn't belong to the map anymore. 3 streets, 2 saloons, and a church without a roof. The sign out front said Jericho, but somebody had crossed the word out with a knife. "Looks cozy," Clara said, her voice dry as gravel. "Depends on your definition," I muttered. We led the horses down, hooves echoing off the empty buildings. The town smelled like iron and rain, the kind of smell that wakes up ghosts. Inside the old train station, benches lay overturned, ticket windows busted. One telegraph wire still hung, swaying like a noose. "This'll do for the night," I said. She didn't answer, just started clearing dust from a corner, like she'd done this 100 times before Survive First. Talk later. I found a lantern, lit it, and the flame painted the walls amber. On one wall, faded posters showed missing people, men wanted by the railroad. Women disappeared from camps. Their eyes followed us wherever the light went. Clara looked at them for a long time. "You ever think how progress keeps count in bones?" she asked. I didn't, but now I would. We ate dry bread in silence. Every chew felt like grinding up guilt. After a while, I took out the badge I'd thrown away and set it on the table between us. She looked at it, then at me. "Why keep it?" "So I remember who I don't want to be." "Then you're halfway to being human again," she said. Her tone wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel either. The rain started, tapping the roof like fingers searching for forgiveness. I asked her where she'd go if she could. "Nowhere," she said. "Everywhere's built on someone's grave." Then she added, quieter, "You ever notice silence has a sound out here?" "Yeah," I said. "Sounds a lot like truth." She smiled, just barely. That small curve of her mouth hit harder than any sermon I'd ever heard. I walked to the platform door. Outside, lightning flashed over the tracks. For a second, I could see my reflection in the metal rails, older, smaller, maybe still salvageable. When I turned back, she was staring at the same rails, like she saw something different. "What do you see?" I asked. "A road that doesn't forgive," she said. The rain came harder. Water pooled under the door, washing over the dirt and the broken glass, and I watched the badge float for a second before I reached down and caught it. It felt cold, honest. I slipped it back into my pocket. Not to wear, just to keep the story straight. Later, I found an old blanket and tossed it her way. She didn't say thanks, but she didn't throw it back either. That counted. I lay down on a bench across from her. Wind howled through the cracks, making the station groan like it remembered being alive. "Half asleep," I heard her whisper. "You ever wonder if the people we killed still walk beside us?" "Every night," I said. "And what do you do when they show up?" "Listen," I told her. "Then keep walking." The thunder rolled closer, loud enough to shake the lamps. For a moment, I thought I saw movement outside, maybe a man, maybe just the past trying to come in. Either way, I kept my hand near the gun, not out of fear, but habit. Some ghosts bleed real. By dawn, the rain stopped. The sky looked washed clean, but the town didn't. Clara stepped outside, hair dripping, cuffs slick with rust. She stood at the platform's edge, staring at the horizon like it owed her something. When I joined her, she said, "You ever notice how the world keeps turning, no matter what it runs over?" I nodded. That's the cruel part, but maybe also the mercy. She looked at me then, really looked. There was no forgiveness in her eyes, just recognition. Two people who'd seen too much of the same sin. That was enough to keep moving. We saddled up when the sun broke through the clouds, painting the rails gold for a heartbeat before fading back to rust. "Where to now?" she asked. "Wherever the road forgets our names," I said. She almost smiled. "Then we better ride fast." As we left Jericho behind, I glanced once more at the church without a roof. Wind blew through it, singing low and hollow, like a choir that refused to stop praying even after the preacher left. Maybe that's what mercy sounds like when nobody's listening. We left Jericho at sunrise. The rails glittered wet, like veins under a dying Sunday. The storm had moved east, but it left its shadow behind. I could still smell the wet iron in the air, and it made me think of blood that learned to rust. For 2 days, we rode quiet. Clara hummed sometimes low, tuneless, like a habit left over from better years. I didn't ask what the song was. Some songs you don't deserve to hear. We stopped near an old rail yard, half buried in sand. A single telegraph pole stood crooked, wire hanging loose. It whispered in the wind, a voice too faint to trust. That's when I saw the dust trail. 3 riders coming fast from the west. One of them carried himself too straight to be an outlaw. "Pinkerton," I said under my breath. Clara looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Yours or mine?" "Both, maybe." They reached us before noon. The man in front wore a dark coat and a badge that gleamed dull silver. He smiled without showing teeth. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Eli Reeves, the railroad ghost himself." "Cole Hart," I said. "Didn't think you'd crawl this far out." I don't crawl," he said. "I collect. You got something belongs to the company." His eyes flicked to Clara, and I felt the air tighten. Clara didn't flinch. She stood behind me, hands loose at her sides. "If you're here for me, you're late," she said. Hart tilted his head. "Oh, I'm not here for you, Miss Moen." "Not exactly. I'm here for what you saw." He pulled something from his coat, a photograph, cracked and faded. It showed a pit lined with railroad ties and bones. "The company wants this gone," he said. "The Chinese camp strike, remember? Laborers who vanished. You were both there one way or another, and now you're both ghosts that talk too much." My throat went dry. I remembered the night how the supervisors ordered the fires, how I turned my horse around instead of stopping them. Hart's grin widened. "You think mercy's a virtue, Eli? Out here it's just unfinished paperwork." I reached for my gun. Hart's men did the same. Then the wire above us snapped in the wind, humming sharp like a warning. Nobody moved for a heartbeat. Then Clara spoke. "You burned them," she said quietly. "You and your bosses. Then you made men like him clean up the ashes." Hart looked at her, amused. "Lady, we built America. Somebody had to lay the tracks." "Yeah," she said. "And somebody's still buried under them." He didn't like that. He stepped closer, rainlight flashing on his badge. "You're both wanted," he said. "Eli for desertion, you for murder. The company's done forgiving ghosts." I could have shot him right there. God knows I thought about it. But there's a rule I learned too late. Shoot a man, and you inherit his reasons. So I said, "Tell your bosses the truth's still moving faster than their trains." He smirked, dropped a single spent cartridge on the table of my conscience. "Consider that a warning," he said. "Next one won't be empty." They rode off, dust swallowing them whole. The sound of hooves faded, but the silence that followed was louder than gunfire. Clara stared at the cartridge on the ground, then kicked it into the dirt. "So that's the ghost chasing you," she said. "Used to be," I said. "What's chasing you now?" "Me," I answered. "Always has been." We camped that night near the tracks. The telegraph wire hummed again, picking up wind from nowhere. It sounded like a song trying to remember its words. Clara sat across from me, firelight trembling between us. "He's not wrong," she said. "You were part of it." "I was," I admitted. "Didn't swing the torch, but I didn't stop it either." "Then why save me?" I looked at her, and for once I didn't hide behind words. Because I saw what mercy wasn't and I wanted to know what it could be. She stared at the flames. Her face softened, then hardened again. You can't rebuild the dead, Eli. I know, I said, but maybe I can build something that won't bury anyone else. The wind carried sparks into the dark. She lay back, eyes open to the sky, and said, that man Hart, he'll come again. I know. What'll you do? Same thing I should have done back then, I said. Stand my ground. She was quiet for a long time, then said something I didn't expect. You ever think mercy's just another word for cowardice? I smiled. Tired. Maybe, but it's the only cowardice that might save us. The night got colder. I sat awake long after she slept, watching the ember glow fade into black. Every crackle sounded like the whisper of bones under steel. And in that sound, I could almost hear them, the workers, the men I didn't save tapping along the rails, asking just one question. What are you going to do this time, Marshall? I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew the morning would ask again. And this time, I planned to answer with something louder than silence. The storm found us 2 nights later, came crawling out of the mountains with thunder in its teeth. By the time we reached the canyon pass, the sky had gone the color of gunmetal. The wind didn't blow, it hunted. We found an old supply shack near the ridge. Roof half gone, floor soaked with the smell of oil and regret. Clara threw her saddle down, started a fire with hands that didn't shake. I'd seen men twice her size crumble in weather like this, but she moved like she'd already been through worse storms and survived every one of them. I hung my coat to dry. The fire hissed, throwing orange light against the tin walls. She sat by the door, staring out at the rain like it was an old friend she didn't trust anymore. After a while, she said, "You knew Hart was telling the truth, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "Those men in the photograph," she said, "you helped bury them." The fire popped. I swear it sounded like the word yes. I said nothing for so long the silence started to sound like lying. Then I said it. Yeah. I was there. The company ordered a cleanup crew. I didn't swing a torch, but I kept the watch. And when they screamed, I rode away. Her eyes stayed on the rain. And my brother? I took a breath that didn't want to stay down. Tom tried to stop the burning. They said he fired first. He didn't, I saw it. The words came out rough, like gravel through teeth. I aimed at his shoulder, wanted to scare him off. The bullet went through the rail and found him instead. She turned then. There was no shock on her face, only something quieter, like she'd expected the truth to hurt, and it still found a way to surprise her. "You killed him," she said. "I did." Her voice rose, hard and trembling. "And now you think saving me makes it even?" "No," I said, "it makes it possible to breathe." The wind slammed the door open, rain spilling in. She stood, fists clenched, tears and water mixing until I couldn't tell which was which. "You know what that bullet did, Marshall? It didn't just kill him, it kept killing me. Every night I remembered the sound." She stepped closer. "And now you want me to forgive you so you can die lighter?" "No," I said. "So you can live heavier with the truth, not a lie." Lightning cracked the sky wide open. For a moment, everything turned white like the world was trying to erase itself. She swung then. Her fist caught my jaw, hard enough to draw blood. I didn't move, didn't block it. She hit again, weaker this time, then pressed both palms against my chest. "Why'd you come back for me?" I looked down at her hands, at the scar on her wrist that matched the burn on mine. "Because the dead don't get second chances," I said, "and maybe the living shouldn't waste theirs." She stared up at me for a long time. Then she stepped back, breathing heavy. The rain poured harder, loud enough to drown out the fire. I dropped to my knees, pressed my hands into the mud. "I remember every face, Clara, every scream. I can't give them peace, but I can give you truth. That's all I've got left." She turned away, shoulders shaking. I thought she'd leave right then, ride out into the rain and never look back. But she didn't. She just said, "Then stop kneeling. If you mean it, stand up and carry it." So I did. Slow, shaking, but I stood. That's when I noticed something. The rain wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, almost human. Maybe because it was finally washing through open wounds instead of closed ones. Hours passed. The fire died. The storm softened to drizzle. Clara sat by the window, her hair slick against her face. eyes swollen but steady. I used to think forgiveness was letting go, she said. What is it then? She looked out at the wet world. Maybe it's just living without wanting someone else to bleed for it. End of. I couldn't tell if she meant me or herself. Maybe both. We didn't speak again till morning. The sky broke open clean and silver, the kind of light that makes you believe the world might try again. She walked out first, boots sinking in the mud. I followed, leaving two sets of tracks side by side. Behind us, the shack sagged under the weight of what we'd said, but it didn't fall. Maybe that's what surviving looks like, staying upright after the truth finally hits. Before we rode off, she picked up the badge from my coat pocket and looked at it. It's still heavy, she said. It's supposed to be, I told her. Then she slipped it back into my hand, not like forgiveness, but like evidence returned to the right owner. The sun climbed over the ridge, turning the wet rails to gold for half a heartbeat. She mounted her horse, pulled her hat low, and said, "Come on, Marshall. We still got ghosts to outride." And we started down the trail, the world steaming around us. The air smelled of iron, rain, and something almost like mercy. Morning came soft and gray, like the world was still deciding if it wanted to start over. The storm had rinsed everything clean except us. The horses were restless, steam rising from their backs. The air smelled of wet sage and burnt wood. Clara stood by the ridge, her hair tangled, her face calm in a way I didn't understand yet. We didn't talk about the night before. Words had done their damage. Now silence had to fix what was left. We packed light, left the shack behind, and rode east where the tracks bent out of sight. By noon we found what I'd been looking for. A section of the old telegraph line blown down by the storm. The poles lay scattered like ribs across the dirt. I swung down from my horse. "This is it," I said. "This is what?" she asked. "Where it started. And maybe where we start fixing it." She eyed the splintered wood. "You want to rebuild that? Why?" "Because if it's still standing, people can talk again. Messages can move. Truth can travel." She gave a half smile that wasn't mocking, just tired. "And who's going to listen? Doesn't matter. We'll send it anyway." We worked without talking. She cleared the brush, I dug holes for the posts. The ground was still soft from the rain, easy to cut but heavy to lift. Sweat mixed with mud till I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Every swing of the hammer felt like an apology I hadn't said yet. Every plank she carried felt like a piece of forgiveness she hadn't promised, but still offered. At one point she looked over and said, "Your hands are bleeding. So are yours." She shrugged. "Guess that makes us even." I smiled, small and stupid, but it stayed. By sunset, we had 3 poles upright again. Not much, but enough to look like a beginning. The sun turned red behind them, wires catching the light like strings on some half-forgotten instrument. I climbed the last pole, looped the wire, and tied it down. My fingers slipped twice, caught splinters, but I didn't stop. When I came down, Clara handed me a rag. "You really think fixing this line makes a difference?" I wiped my hands, looked at her, then at the horizon. "I don't know. But maybe mercy's not about finishing things. Maybe it's about keeping them from falling apart again." She nodded slowly, like she was saving that thought for later. We camped beside the tracks that night. No rain this time, just the soft hum of wind through the wire we'd strung. It made a faint note, high and lonely, but alive. Clara leaned back against her saddle, eyes half closed. "That sound," she murmured, "it's like the world's breathing again." "Or whispering," I said, "telling us it's still listening." She chuckled, a quiet sound that caught me off guard. "Don't get poetic on me, Marshall. You're better at silence." "Yeah," I said, "but silence gets lonely." The fire burned low. She pulled her blanket tighter, and after a long pause said, "You ever think maybe what we're building isn't for the living?" I tossed another stick into the flames. "Then let the dead have their message too. What would you tell them?" "That we're still trying." She didn't answer, but she smiled small, real, and sad in the right ways. When dawn came, the light touched the wires first, turning them silver. I walked up to the middle pole, the one standing the straightest, and pulled out my knife. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Marking it," I said. I carved 2 names into the wood. T. Moen and E. Reeves. Nothing fancy, just letters deep enough to last a few storms. Clara came closer, traced the grooves with her fingers. That's my brother's name. I know. You think carving it makes anything better? No, I said, but it keeps him in the story, and maybe that's close enough to justice. She stepped back, looked at the poles, the wires, the names, and then at me. For the first time since the desert, her eyes didn't look like a battlefield. You really believe in all this, don't you? I don't believe, I said. I just refuse to stop trying. We saddled up when the sky turned gold. Before mounting, she picked up a piece of rail spike from the ground, rusty but solid. She handed it to me. For your trouble, she said. What about you? She shrugged. I'll find another. I slipped it into my coat pocket beside the badge. 2 weights, same story. One for what I did, one for what I'm still doing. As we rode out, the wind caught the wire behind us, and for a second it sang a soft hum across the desert, a voice without words. Clara turned her head, listening. Hear that? Yeah. What's it saying? I smiled at the road ahead. That maybe we're not finished yet, and for the first time in years, I believed it. The desert doesn't keep secrets. It just waits for you to stop pretending you've forgotten them. We were 3 days out from the repair site when Hart came back. I heard the horses before I saw them, 3 shadows cutting through the Sunday. Clara saw it too. Guess the ghosts found us, she said, calm as ever. I told her to ride ahead, to the ridge where the new telegraph poles stood. If the line's still holding, send the message. Let the towns know what's buried under their tracks. She frowned. What about you? I'll buy us a minute. Hart dismounted 50 yards away. Gun low, grin higher. Always cleaning up messes you can't fix, Marshal? Somebody's got to try, I said. He drew first. The sound cracked through the valley like thunder, too late for rain. I fired once, so did he. The bullets met somewhere between us, like they couldn't decide which sin to finish. Then everything slowed. The smell of gunpowder, the dust turning red, the world finally exhaling. I hit the ground hard. Didn't hurt much. Not like the other stuff. Hart fell too, but I didn't watch him die. Didn't need to. Men like him never really do. They just pass their hate down to someone else. Clara came running, shouting my name like it could hold me together. She pressed her hands to the wound, but I knew better. You finish it, I told her. The line, the message. She was crying now, the kind that doesn't make a sound. I smiled, blood on my teeth. Guess Mercy's finally on time. The sky went pale, then quiet, endless. I remember the wind moving through the wires, humming low, carrying her voice as she sent the code. A string of dots and dashes across the empty miles. Truth, riding faster than any train ever did. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't on the ground anymore. I was everywhere, the rails, the wire, the hum. Maybe that's all a man like me ever becomes, a note in the song of what's left. They say the desert swallows its dead. But sometimes, if you listen close, you can still hear the line singing when the wind's just right. It sounds like rain coming back. It sounds like forgiveness, learning how to walk. If you've listened this far, take a breath. Not a big one. Just enough to remind yourself you're still here. Because that's what mercy really is, isn't it? Not forgetting what we've done. Not washing it clean. Just staying. Long enough to make something better than the pain we left behind. Out there, the wind still runs along the old wires. Some folks say it's just metal singing in the heat. But I like to think it's Eli's voice carrying truth a few miles further each day. Reminding us that forgiveness doesn't always sound like words. Sometimes it just sounds like someone choosing not to hate anymore. If this story found a small place inside you, leave a sign of it. Share it with someone who carries their own weight in silence. And if you'd like to ride with us again, hit that subscribe button so next time the wind hums through the wires, you'll hear the next story waiting in the dust. Take care of your mercy. It's the only thing the world can't steal from you.